Welcome back to the late day wrap up, being recorded significantly earlier than what I typically do. The reason being because this morning's video is banned. YouTube's banned it. Well, the reason why they banned the video is because I played a song as the intro song, which I typically do during the live streams, if you remember from like years ago now. And what typically happens is if I play someone else's song is that YouTube will just appropriate the advertisement revenue, take it away from myself and give it to the creator, which is fine by me, all good. But apparently with the song that I played this morning, they really didn't like that one, so instead of doing that, they just decided to block it. Fair enough. Life goes on, I guess. I'm trying to get the video muted on that, what's it called? On that song so that I can re-upload it, but I suppose we can just kind of summarize the thoughts here in this in what would be the late day wrap up anyways, and get it back on out there, and we might try again tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, with that said, this video is going to be a little bit on the shorter side. If you want the more long-term analysis, actually check out yesterday's long-term analysis playlist, as that's going to be about 40 or so minutes of straight up fucking Bitcoin spewing. So with that in mind, we're going to start off with the most important things to be aware of that could potentially be happening the soonest, of which we have the CME 2-day closure tonight at 5 p.m. Standard Time. Any sort of a closure above the topside Toronto band here, which is about 53,600, would be indicative of further continuation of new all-time highs probably throughout the rest of this week. Looking at the 3-day, we have a chance to do the same thing as well. That level is a little bit higher, 55,400. So essentially, if both these conditions are met on both these timeframes, I would be looking for those new all-time highs to be printed probably within this next week, maybe 2 weeks of price action. Of course, should be remembered that we did see spot price action have its weekly closure yesterday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and once again we did see that the topside Toronto band has been well trending back above. So with all of that in mind, I do still have biases generally speaking of new all-time highs on Bitcoin, albeit with a short-term time frame downside and sideways action. Now, of course, because we are dealing with big numbers here, obviously like a $5,000 move to the downside, of which we've seen thus far from about 58 to 53, does seem pretty damn threatening, of course. But at the end of the day, when we do look at this from a greater view, I don't really see that it's super problematic, except for, of course, the short-term time frames. So I do want to be on record as saying that short-term time frames right now, I'm not super gung-ho about. Medium and higher term timeframes I think are still quite obvious here. So with that in mind, I would be looking for a little bit of a pullback, of which we've seen a good amount of that thus far. But ultimately, because of the higher term timeframes, I am still looking for that to get essentially reaccumulated and march upwards and onwards. So the question is, where does the dumbola end if you are looking at this from a 5-minute time frame view? And if we go back on over here, I do think that anywhere right around low $50,000 region is kind of an obvious area for a bit of a bouncy bounce. We can even look at it from where we're at right now, as we did see Bitcoin essentially test the bottom side of the $54,000 level right here. And on a closing base, we haven't even broken this, to be fair, just yet. Still an hour left to go, an hour and 4 minutes and 27 seconds to be exact on this next 4-hour dildo. And if we go down to the hourly right now, it is looking, it's looking pretty damn good for a bounce. Big old wick on it. A volume tells a story right there as well. So if I did have call things right now, do I think that Bitcoin bounces from this level back up towards north of like 55 or 56,000 bucks? Very likely, yes. Do want to see this confirmed, obviously, but within the next 4 minutes, this should be set in stone. So all good after that. And we will have several divergences building up, I believe, as well on the 4-hour right here, going all the way back to our last confirmed low, which was on 19th of February. That was all the way down to about 51,000 bucks. So essentially, as long as Bitcoin's not breaking 51,000 bucks, I don't really have any reason to change my high-term time frame analysis view. Now, below 51,000 bucks, things do start to change, especially for the medium-term time frames. I would start to get bearish on there, and just going level to level here, I would be looking for an extension down to about, realistically, 48,000 bucks would be the next sort of bounce territory. But the long term becomes in jeopardy, essentially, of a reversal with a closure on a daily, or you could probably use a 12-hour or even a 4-hour below 45,000 bucks. If you're using a 4-hour, probably 44,300 is a little bit more detailed right there. But with that in mind, I do want to put things in perspective with the daily right here. That is kind of like your last higher low, if you will. So the daily trend is not really in jeopardy anytime soon. But because we are dealing with big numbers, you can see basically like a $5,000 move to the downside and doesn't really even register on the higher term time frames is what I'm trying to say. But of course, for the people out there who are on the crack trader time frames, like the 4-hour and under, which can be very, very profitable for sure. That is just, it doesn't really matter if you're bullish on the higher term time frames when you can still play out a fucking $5,000 move to the downside. $5,000 move to the downside is always gonna be a $5,000 move to the downside. But here there are a few concerning things we do see. So I would be very defensive if Bitcoin does break below this level right here, especially. That That's going to be 54,000 bucks. That's going to be your first warning flag. The second warning flag, which is a pretty damn big warning flag. In fact, I wouldn't even call it a warning flag. This is like red alert. Below this level would be 51,000 bucks. So would be this. So I am looking at a 4-hour Joule sell signal here on spot price action. I don't believe we see the same thing on CME. Actually, in fact, CME, no, I'm wrong about that. CME is actually lining up for a potentially decent one here, which is rather concerning, actually. Again, I don't look at these as actionable until we see a breakage of trend. I really don't like leading into these, and you've probably seen a lot of these signals kind of, hint at a signal, and then, only at the last, at the last tick to not be considered a signal. And in this case, where would I consider this a signal confirmed? That would be below the $51,000 region right here, your last higher low right there, and of course on spot price action as well. So with that, it'd be right here to be 100% exact. Now, of course, that would be also accompanied by historical volatility percentile in an expansive phase from a very low level as well, which would really start to call into question at least the not just a little bit above the medium term as well. And we can start talking about another probably $5,000 move to the downside from 51,000 bucks. But again, that is my big pivot for that. So anything within this region right here, lower term timeframes, can play off that obviously, but the higher term timeframes give me the bias for the for the next week or two. And in this case right here, I would essentially be having the bias of looking at those levels get reaccumulated. So to me, it's more of a question of does Bitcoin bounce off the $54,000 level? Does it bounce off $51,000 level? Below $51,000, yes, that's where I start to let go of more immediately bullish looks, especially on the higher term timeframes. And we can start to talk about a move back down, probably even below 40,000 bucks to about 39,000 bucks before the next sort of major bounce. But for now, I do look at those as essentially the two opportunistic regions, of which we've already kind of tested into one of them. That would be the $54,000 region. Next one up, 51,000 bucks below that. And I really don't have a bias on which one kind of gets naturally hit here, but it is going to be a bit of a interesting proposition here because we do see the divergences that could potentially be building up on these lower term timeframes. Now, I am breaking one of my own rules here by talking about divergences that are, we don't even have a fucking local low to be exact right here. When we were looking out on the stream, this was potentially going to turn into a local low. The confirmations were not had right there, did not get the critical closure above 56,600 or whatever the fuck it was. And more importantly, we didn't get two successful ones. So with that in mind, I would still be looking at this as a bit of a downside threat in the short term. Higher term timeframes though, I would be looking for those kind of march onwards and upwards. I'm looking for anything else. However, on the 12-hour, do we see anything right here? 12-hour does look a little more downside postured as well. Momentum is going to start to turn to the downside here too, with any sort of a closure below 55,850. So yeah, down and sideways on the short-term timeframes does look somewhat likely, but again, I really would pull back my own opinion of that. My strong opinions are with the higher-term timeframes here, which could take a little bit longer to play out, of course. But yes, the next sort of basin level would be about 51,000 bucks if $54,000 does break. Again, I'd like to see it on a 4-hour, maybe a 2-hour could work as well if I want to be a little more aggressive. Yeah, I could probably use a 2-hour here to be fair. But for right now, very short-term time frames like the 2-hour, I'd be looking for this to bounce a little bit more. We do have several strikes of hidden bullish divergence building up right here. However, no, we did create a lower low right there, but still this one way the fuck back on over here actually would work out as well, at least for a short-term bounce. So with that in mind, I'd probably wait until the regular market's open. I don't know, we got another, 3 hours here? Yeah, about 3 hours here, 3.5 hours. Before the real game begins. Until then, I'd be looking for a little bit of sideways, maybe a little bit more downside, and then probably try to bounce around the time that regular market's open, and keep an eye on the higher term timeframes that we are looking at to close today. Again on CME, which is the 2-day and the 3-day, and I don't believe spot price action has its own. No higher term timeframes like 2-day, 3-day today, just the daily, of which I still do have the upside targets around psychological level 60,000 bucks, and then of course above there we do still have the $62,000 level in line with what we see on the 3-spot extension right here. So all of that still very much relevant to the upside, but for now, I don't think that Bitcoin's like going to blast up there today, obviously. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, but I don't think that is going to happen today. If it is going to happen, likely after a little bit of sideways within this range on the higher term time frames leading into the into the end of the week. Again, problems below 51,000 bucks, 54,000 bucks could be used as a very short term time frame pivot if you put a gun to my head and made me trade it, but I don't have to do that. so fair enough. With all of that in mind, to kind of wrap up these thoughts, extremely short-term timeframes, very likely to bounce back up, probably somewhere back around $56,000. Be looking for a little bit of a sideways range, and then real market begins when traditional markets open back up. Then I want us to check out how the higher-term timeframes close, like the 2-day and 3-day, to kind of judge the more immediate potential of continuation to new all-time highs throughout the rest of this week. Anyways, with that said, I do want to wish you the best once again. Apologies for the issues this morning. I'm still kind of like getting into the old swing of things, and also kind of dealing with a little bit of lack of sleep. But for right now, I think we'll come back tomorrow and give it another go. Maybe try something a little bit different next time. And with that said, I salute you. Take care, and until next time.